For your ears only for the week of June 22nd and the first full day of summer, I'm David Alpern.
I'm Catherine Herzog with this news quote. This procedure is totally illegitimate and not acceptable for us. The people of Afghanistan will make their own decisions. That was Afghan presidential candidate Abdullah Abdullah, leader in the election's first round, rejecting a second-round tally by the nation's election commission after his complaints about voting irregularities were ignored. Now this.
It's not just Iraq, but it's a whole pattern of behavior over the last 6 years that has refused to recognize that there is a war on terror, that we've got to move very aggressively to be able to deal with that. And this administration has repeatedly demonstrated that they don't believe it.
We have had advisors in Iraq through our embassy, and we're prepared to send a small number of additional American military advisors, up to 300, to assess how we can best train, advise, and support Iraqi security forces going forward.
Former Vice President Dick Cheney last week led a reanimation of Bush-era hawks critical of Barack Obama for ending their 10-year war in Iraq too soon, for not doing more for the new war in Syria, and thus for encouraging a terrorist tide now sweeping toward Baghdad. With predictably grim reluctance, the president finally ordered a modest special forces mission back to Iraq, while warning that only a comprehensive political settlement there could even begin to establish a long-term peace among long hostile Sunni, Shiite, and Kurdish populations.
To consider the short-term military mission, the ingredients for long-term peace, and related questions about Iran, threats to the U.S. homeland, and more, we're joined again by retired Army Colonel Douglas Macgregor, a decorated veteran of the First Gulf War. He's now a strategic consultant and Ph.D. author of 5 books on military strategy and reform. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Does a force of 300 elite Special Forces fighters suggest simply an assessment mission or inevitable boots-on-the-ground advice and assistance for such Iraqi troops that have not yet fled forces of the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, ISIS and their local Sunni allies? And what do you see the GIs actually doing?
Well, we're told that, or we were told initially at any rate, that the 300 would be what the president described, but in the last few days, other members of the White House staff have told members of the press that, in fact, these 300 will constitute intelligence cells designed to provide targeting information. And there was even a discussion of executing attacks with unmanned aerial vehicles, what some people refer to as drones, all the way up into Syria. So that certainly suggests mission creep on a scale that the president did not admit to.
The president himself has warned of possible manned or unmanned airstrikes, at least to defend Baghdad, as they did to protect Benghazi during Libya's revolution. We know what happened there more recently. What effectiveness do you see for airstrikes, given the situation in Iraq now?
Not very much. First of all, I think we all need to keep in mind that we created the current catastrophe. We installed the Arab Shiite dictatorship that Mr. Maliki presides over. Mr. Maliki was always Iran's candidate, and effectively we've created a Shiite Arab state that is allied with Iran, a beachhead for Iranian strategic power and influence. All of the Sunni Arabs and Turks in the region want to destroy it. So now we propose to go back in after having created this disaster and ally ourselves ostensibly with Iran and Iranian influence to preserve this Shiite Arab state. It doesn't make a great deal of sense strategically for us at all.
Has ISIS taken a page out of the General Petraeus playbook by building support from Sunni tribal leaders, as he did? And could those leaders shake off ISIS if they unseat today's Shiite leadership in Baghdad and win what they consider a fair share of power and resources?
Well, Petraeus bought the Sunni Arab leaders with almost $1 billion in cash. ISIS isn't buying up anybody. They simply came in and were rapidly expanded in terms of size and strength by the Sunni Arab tribes that were all anti-Shiite and wanted to boot the Shiites out of their particular region. And that's one of the reasons ISIS made such rapid progress. ISIS is not likely to enjoy the kind of strength that it's had thus far for very long, though, because they've already fallen into the bad habit of decapitating people and implementing Sharia law, which is, frankly, not terribly popular among most Sunni Arabs in Iraq.
Do you see Iraq inevitably breaking into Sunni, Shiite, and Kurdish enclaves or actual separate states?
Well, that was really the product of the surge. More than anything else, the Shiite Sunni civil war was over in December of 2006. Baghdad had been converted to a largely Shiite city. Then Petraeus came in and began this surge with a 200% increase in airstrikes. We killed large numbers of Sunnis and effectively completed the process of installing Mr. Maliki and the Iranian regime. So what we're seeing now really is a backlash to that, but not much is likely to change. The ISIS enjoys success largely because it's in a Sunni area. I don't think it's going to have much success pushing further south. So to answer your question, this country is being divided since the surge, and what we're seeing happen today, both in the Kurdish north and the center with the Sunni Arabs and in the south with the Shiite, is essentially a consolidation of something that's already a reality on the ground.
On TV last week, you said the Israelis have an interesting viewpoint on sectarian struggles as we see now in Iraq. Talk about that.
Well, I think we need to keep in mind that both the Shiite Islamists and the Sunni Islamists hate Christians and Jews. If they can kill Christians and Jews, they do so and have done so. They are anti-American, they are anti-European, they're anti-Israeli. So from the standpoint of the Israelis, if your two enemies are involved in killing each other, it's folly to interfere and stop the process. It's even dumber to align yourself with one or the other. I mean, we need to stop and consider that just last year, Mr. Obama wanted to attack the Syrian army and its government that is allied with Iran on behalf of some of the same people who are now in central Iraq trying to kill Shiites. This year, he wants to attack the Sunni Islamists that last year he was prepared to support and align himself with Iran. This is not a national security strategy. This is a Monty Python episode.
Talk more about the Iran factor, what its forces are doing now in Iraq, what prospects you see for coordination with U.S. plans and operations, and maybe some greater cooperation going forward.
I'm not sure that we're going to buy much in terms of cooperation from Iran for anything that we do. We're simply welcomed as useful fools in the terms that Lenin thought of the West. What you're seeing happen in Iraq is predictable. The Iranians are not going to allow the Shiite state that dominates Baghdad and southern Iraq to fall into the hands of the Sunnis. They are going to defend their beachhead. Their beachhead through Iraq touches Saudi Arabia. Eastern Saudi Arabia has large numbers of Shiites. That's one of the reasons the Saudis are so determined to destroy this state. You have the same problem in Qatar, the same problem in Kuwait. The Emirates want to destroy the Shiite state. The Turks loathe and hate Mr. Maliki and the Shiites in Iran. This is a larger regional conflict that has very little to do with us. We certainly set it in motion through our intervention and occupation in Iraq, but this is not our fight. Men in pickup trucks with machine guns running around in open stretches of wasteland, desert, and I have been to these places, there is nothing there, are meaningless to us.
Retired Army Colonel Douglas Macgregor is a decorated veteran of the First Gulf War, now a strategic consultant and Ph.D. author of 5 books on military strategy and reform.
Quote from the news, "I remember them yelling, 'You're going to make it, you're going to make it.' I just kept trying to tell them I was going to die." That was former Marine Corporal William Kiley Carpenter on the near-fatal wounds he received from throwing his body on a grenade to save a buddy in Afghanistan, and for which last week he received the Medal of Honor.
Next, more on Iran, in Iraq, the ongoing nuclear talks, and more for your ears only.